Since the dawn of time, I have been an idea, a whisper of darkness waiting for the right moment to breathe. For centuries, I was imprisoned, confined by those who thought themselves worthy of containing me. Oh, how wrong they were, always. The box, that cursed box carved from black wood, inscribed with symbols even I have long forgotten. My latest jailer is an old man living in a mansion in Boston, near the historic neighborhood of Beacon Hill, where red brick buildings and gas lamps compete with the ghosts of a city that never sleeps. Every part of that house resonates with the family's history, an ancient bloodline passing me down from generation to generation, each one reluctant, each one fearful, but always the same oath, to keep me locked away. And then he came along, the grandson, a child of golden hair and curious eyes, like so many before. I saw him for the first time when the old man brought him into that dark room, where the box rested on a high shelf, surrounded by portraits of ancestors. The boy stretched out his tiny hand, pointing, fascinated. A smile cut across my essence, invisible, because I knew he would be the key. "What's that, Grandpa?" he asked, his innocent eyes shining. Ah, innocence, what a cruel joke. "Nothing you need to know," the old man replied, leading him away. But children, oh, how they never forget. On the second visit, the boy returned. This time, his nimble little hands managed to open the box. And that's when I felt it, the relief, the ecstasy. I seeped into him like a mist, like an invisible poison, and I took him, my vessel of flesh of life. The boy screamed within, trapped, voiceless. And there I was, finally with eyes to see, feet to walk. And oh, how invigorating it was. The first was easy, the maid who was climbing the stairs. A push, a muffled scream, and there she was, lying on the floor, a heap of broken bones. People call it an accident, I call it fun. But to be trapped in such a small body, oh, the agony. Slow movements, weak hands. I was a shadow of what I should be, so tempting to wander at night, but with such short legs. What an irony. One night, as I watched the boy's grandfather, he hesitated, his eyes lingering on me, or rather, on the boy. There was something there, a growing suspicion. "Jacob, what do you have there?" he asked when he saw me holding the box. His face grew pale as he tried to hide his fear. Such a delicious sight. He knew, maybe not exactly how, but he felt my presence. The deaths of the boy's parents. Oh, they were a bit more entertaining. A simple cut on the brake line and bang. Cliché, perhaps, but efficiency is underrated in modern times. Now we lived together, the old man and I, in his stifling mansion. He avoided speaking of the box, pretending the past didn't haunt him, but I knew he felt my gaze burning into his back. Then came the inevitable moment. The old man called a priest, a skeletal man with a sunken face and eyes that seemed to have seen too many demons in his life. "Are you sure about this?" he asked the old man. Ah, fool! I could smell the fear in his voice. The ritual began, and the sacred words burned me like acid, each phrase a stab into my essence. For a moment, just a moment, I was pushed back into that infernal prison of the box, and there, standing silent, I thought I might have lost. But then, oh, what a delicious twist. The priest, that frail, hesitant creature, let his hand rest on the box a moment longer than necessary. And then I felt it, that window of opportunity I had been waiting for so long. Oh, I slid into him like a veil of shadow. The sensation of an adult, strong body was indescribable. It was like waking from a long sleep, finally stretching my muscles, feeling life pulse through every vein, every cell. When the priest's eyes opened, I felt the stiffness of my new face, my lips forming a smile of pure triumph. The old man fell to his knees, crying, seeing his grandson return to himself. The child sobbed, hugging his grandfather. A touching moment for them. For me, a pathetic display. I left the house that night, the box hidden beneath my clerical robe. As I walked through the dark streets, I heard the echo of the bells from the Church of the Trinity, the cold Boston wind brushing against my new face. And oh, how good it was to walk without the awkward steps of a child. I was headed to the place of the final ritual, the one that would destroy the box and free me once and for all. As I walked, a thought crossed my mind. How many more souls could I consume before I tired of this world? The priest was just the first. And hearing the echo of the boy's desperate laughter still trapped inside me, I knew that I was finally free to spread the darkness. And the city. Oh, the city would never know what was coming. This is just the beginning.
It started with a phone call, one of those late-night, hushed conversations that set my nerves on edge. Vanessa had been on edge herself for weeks, consumed by jealousy and frustration. She'd been chasing a promotion at her law firm, pouring every ounce of herself into the pursuit, but there was always Melissa Crane, brilliant, ambitious, always one step ahead. I'd seen Vanessa unravel before, but never like this. She'd stopped eating, barely slept, and every conversation seemed to circle back to Melissa. That night, when I overheard her on the phone muttering, "There has to be a way to end this," I felt the first prick of fear. The conversation lasted nearly an hour, with Vanessa whispering about rituals, ancient texts, and some figure called the Red Queen. My mind flashed back to half-remembered stories from my college mythology courses. The Red Queen, an old European entity, sometimes appearing in Celtic and Ligurian legends as a spirit of ruin and chaos. There were whispers of her being summoned by those who sought power, vengeance, or even just a means to an end, but her price was always steep. When Vanessa hung up, her eyes met mine with a strange intensity. "I found a way to fix everything," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We just need to perform a ritual." At first, I refused. It sounded insane, dangerous. But she was relentless. "It's just one night," she insisted. "One chance to finally have what we deserve." The desperation in her voice cut deep, and eventually I caved. The ritual took place at a secluded corner of Graceland Cemetery. It was midnight, the air thick with fog, and the distant hum of traffic barely reached us. Vanessa had meticulously prepared the scene. A circle of black candles, strange symbols carved into the ground, and a small blood-stained book she'd brought back from some hidden shop downtown. As I stood there, shivering in the cold, I couldn't help but wonder if we'd gone too far. Vanessa began the chant, her voice low, wavering at first but gaining strength as she went on. The fog thickened, swirling around us, and I could feel a shift, like the very air had become charged with electricity. Then she appeared. The Red Queen stepped out from the shadows, her eyes gleaming like embers. Her crimson gown seemed to flow as if made of liquid, her hair a black cascade against her pale skin. She was both beautiful and terrifying, a presence that demanded submission. Vanessa took a step forward, her breath itching. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "I want her gone. I want Melissa gone." The Red Queen tilted her head, a smile curling on her lips. "What do you offer?" Her voice was soft but commanding, echoing through the fog. Vanessa paused, her eyes darting toward me for just a moment. "Anything," she replied, breathless. "I'll give you anything." The Queen's eyes flickered with amusement. "Anything? That's a dangerous word, dear." "I mean it," Vanessa insisted, her tone sharp. "Take whatever you want. Just make her disappear." The Red Queen purred, moving closer to Vanessa. "I will take what is most precious to you when the deed is done." My heart skipped a beat. "Wait, what does that mean?" I stepped forward, but Vanessa held up a hand to silence me, her gaze locked on the Queen. "I accept," Vanessa said, her voice unwavering. The Queen smiled, and I felt an icy chill run down my spine. "It is done," she whispered, and with that, the candle snuffed out, leaving us in darkness. 2 days later, the news spread like wildfire. Melissa Crane had vanished. Her car was found abandoned on a bridge, her apartment ransacked, but no trace of her remained. It was as if she'd been plucked out of existence. Vanessa was euphoric. Her obsession faded, replaced by an almost manic glee. But as the days passed, something shifted. Shadows in our apartment seemed to move, flickers of darkness at the corner of my vision. And then there were the whispers, soft at first, barely perceptible, but growing louder, more insistent. They spoke of blood, of bargains, of prices paid. One night, I woke to find Vanessa standing at the window, staring into the darkness. "Something's wrong," she murmured, clutching her arms around herself. It's not over." "What do you mean?" I asked, fear tightening my chest. "You got what you wanted, didn't you?" She shook her head, her eyes glassy and distant. "The Red Queen. She said she'd take what I valued most." I felt my stomach drop, but I forced a laugh. "That's ridiculous, Vanessa. She's gone. It's over." But it wasn't. That night, I woke to the sound of something scraping against the floor. I turned on the light to see Vanessa crouched by our bed, furiously carving the same symbols from the ritual into the wooden floorboards. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled, grabbing her arm. "She's coming," she whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "She's coming to collect." The room grew colder, and then I saw her, the Red Queen, standing in the corner, her eyes locked on me. "What is this?" I demanded, stepping between her and Vanessa. "You got what you wanted." "No, she didn't," the Queen replied, her smile twisting into something darker. "I said I'd take what was most precious to her. Did you think it would be that easy?" It hit me then like a punch to the gut. All those late-night conversations, all those moments when I stood by her, supported her, loved her even when she was at her worst. I was what she valued most. Vanessa let out a strangled sob, collapsing to the floor. No, you can't," she gasped, reaching out to the Queen. "Please, not him. I didn't mean it. I didn't." "But you did," the Queen whispered, stepping toward me. "You promised me everything, and now I will take it." "No, please take me instead," Vanessa screamed, but the Queen only laughed, a sound that echoed in my bones. "Love is such a fleeting thing, isn't it?" She leaned in close, her breath cold against my skin. "But your life, your soul, that's something I can savor." My heart pounded, the realization crashing over me. "Oh God, Vanessa, you promised her," I whispered, backing away. "You promised her me." I reached out for Vanessa, but she just sat there, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Before I could say another word, the Red Queen placed her hand on my chest, and a searing pain shot through me. My body convulsed, every nerve on fire, as darkness began to creep in at the edges of my vision. I fought against it, but it was useless. And as the light faded, as my heartbeat grew faint, the last thing I saw was Vanessa crumpled on the floor, whispering, "I didn't know. I didn't know."
I've always been someone who prefers observing to participating. Amid the chaos of Shinjuku, Tokyo, my city felt alive, like a pulsating organism that I loved studying from afar. Every street, every bar in Golden Gai, every lantern swaying in the wind told a different story. But one story in particular I should never have followed. That night, I was at the Hanazono Shrine, an oasis in the heart of the metropolis. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the soft ringing of bells from the torii gates echoed with the wind. It was then that I saw her for the first time, a woman in a white kimono, standing in front of the altar. Her long black hair concealed her face, and there was something about her that made time seem to slow down. The silence around her was deafening, even with the city sounds all around. Strangely, no one else seemed to notice her. Passers-by walked by without a glance, as if she were part of the scenery, but I couldn't look away. I was drawn to her with a fascination I couldn't explain. Who was she? Why was she standing there so still, in a place where thousands passed by without a second thought? Days went by, and I kept seeing her, always at a distance, always in the shadows of temples or dimly lit alleys. It was as if she was subtly calling out to me, without words, urging me to understand what kept her anchored there. I began researching old legends, combing through dusty books in Jimboko's bookstores. That's when I found a story that fit. A woman, a courtesan from the Edo period, betrayed and murdered by merchants who used her life as part of a pact to gain wealth. She was taken to the old Shinjuku market, one of the largest in the city centuries ago, and sacrificed there. The promise was that she would bring fortune to all who sold their goods there. As long as her name was forgotten, her story erased forever. The pact was fulfilled. Her story vanished from memory, but her soul never found peace. This all fascinated me in ways I couldn't explain. I wanted to understand more, to see more, so I began to follow her, keeping my distance, trying to unravel her patterns, her movements, as if I were an investigator searching for answers. Oh, how naive I was. One night, while trailing her, she stopped before a couple laughing and chatting at the edge of an alley. They looked like tourists, unaware of the history that surrounded them. I watched from afar, my heart racing, as the woman in the kimono approached them, her face still hidden by her hair. And at that moment, I noticed the pendants hanging from the couple's necks. They weren't simple good luck charms. They were replicas of the old merchant seals that represented the pact of betrayal. These seals, crafted in gold and silver, had become a fashionable accessory in the city's high-end stores. They were sold as authentic pieces of Japanese culture to tourists who wanted a piece of history, without knowing they carried the mark of an ancient curse. Each seal represented a merchant family that had taken part in the pact, a reminder of those who betrayed the woman who now walked the city seeking justice. The couple continued laughing until she faced them. For the first time she lifted her face and I saw her eyes. They were empty, but they overflowed with a pain that seemed to echo across centuries. The couple froze, their smiles fading, and a terror I cannot describe washed over them. In an instant, they began to mutter, to scream in a language I couldn't understand, before collapsing to the ground, convulsing as if some unseen force was tearing the breath from their lungs. The truth hit me like lightning. She was after those who carried the symbol of the betrayal that condemned her. The city had betrayed her, transformed her into a vengeful spectre, and those who, out of ignorance or greed, wore the merchant seals were condemned to relive her torment, her terror. After that night, my fascination grew. There was something about her quest for justice, for vengeance, that held me. I began to see more signs of her in Shinjuku, a trail of sakura blossoms that bloomed where she walked, a silence that fell over the busiest streets. It was as if the very spirit of the city followed her, recognizing the debt it owed. I was never her target. Why? Perhaps because I didn't carry the symbols of the past she so despised. But at the same time, I became part of her journey. I became the observer, the one who witnessed her vengeance unfold, like an actor who refuses to leave the stage. One night, I followed her to the old Shinjuku market, the same place where she had been sacrificed. The stalls were empty, and the city's sounds seemed distant, as if they were on the other side of a mirror. In the center of the market, she stood, kneeling before an improvised altar. In her hands, a piece of silk stained with blood. And there, beside her, I saw figures that hadn't been there before, skeletal shadows, with wrinkled faces and hollow eyes. They were the old merchants, doomed to follow her for eternity, bearing the weight of their betrayals. That's when I realized she didn't just want vengeance. She wanted to be remembered. She wanted her pain to be known, for everyone to understand the injustice she endured. And in that moment, I realized I was serving that purpose. I, the silent observer, was recalling her story, her suffering, her vengeance. I should have felt fear, should have run. But instead, I felt a strange empathy for her. A soul erased from the world now finally had someone who saw her, who understood her pain. But when I thought I had figured everything out, I saw the true horror. The next morning, as I walked through Shinjuku, I saw her image reflected in others' eyes. They too had started seeing her, feeling her presence. What had once been her personal journey was now becoming a collective curse. She had broken the barriers of time, of history, and now sought vengeance on anyone who carried, even unknowingly, the symbols of the pact that killed her. Oh God, now I see that I am also part of her, not as a victim, but as someone destined to witness and carry her legacy, someone who will remember her when everyone else tries to forget again. The city of Shinjuku will never be the same, and maybe one day she'll let me go. But until then, I'll keep watching, telling her story to anyone who will listen, because her name will not be erased again,